Hello girls, I'm being a bit of a geography geek, so I thought I'd have a go at recording a lesson today. Today we're going to be looking at causes of urbanisation. Last lesson, you should have something in your book that looks like this. So you might want to leave room to do your homework, and you shouldn't really have filled in that second column unless you were confident on the causes. But today we're going to be looking at those causes in a little bit more detail. And we're also then going to be looking at how land use varies in urban areas, so what kinds of different environments you get within a city. The first thing I want you to do is stick in the PLCs in the front cover. If I show you, I don't know if I can, that bit there, the orange cover. Might be able to get an arrow, one sec. Oh look, there we go, in there on the front cover of your book. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, so you should have stuck those in by now. The next part of the lesson is to look at the definition. So we've got two reasons why urbanisation is happening. The first one is rural to urban migration. This is when people move from the countryside into the towns. So urbanisation as on a whole is people moving into cities, but they could be coming from anywhere. Rural to urban migration is people coming from the countryside. So the key is in the word rural, which it means countryside, and urban means towns. So if you remember that, that will help. The second one there is natural increase. This is when the birth rate exceeds the death rate, or in other words, there are more people being born than dying. And this is something naturally happening in cities because there are more younger people there. So there's not as many people dying and there's more people being born. So if you could you just copy those down into your books, and then we'll move on to the next part. Alright, I'm going to talk you through this image here. You have this on the worksheets in front of you as well. So it's basically a recap from what we looked at last lesson. It says study graph A, which is the one in the picture. And it says the first question, describe the trends shown by each of the lines. Support your answer with evidence from the graph. Okay, so the key word, command word there is describe. And it says shown by each of the lines. So it wants you to talk about each of them. You've got the red one there, which is the whole world. The blue one, which is more developed countries. The green one, which is the least developed countries. And then you've got the purple one, which is the less developed regions. And then you've got the years along the bottom and the percentage of people living in the urban areas. So what we should see there says describe the trends. So all you have to say is what's happening. All of the trends in all of the lines are increasing. So you can start off by saying something along those lines. But it does say support with evidence from the graph. So for example, you could say, if I get the little thing here, so here, your world population in 1950, 30% of people lived in urban areas in the whole world. The majority of those in 1950 was the blue line, the more developed countries, whereas the least developed countries were right down the bottom. As it increased over time, you find where we are now, around here, probably a little bit further, you can see that it's increased and we're now at around 50% of people living in towns and cities. There's still mostly people in the more developed countries, but the less developed countries has increased rapidly, as you can see from the green line. And if we look at the purple line, the less developed regions, they have increased extremely rapidly. The second question there, I'm basically just talking you through it, by the way, and then you can have a go yourself writing it. So the second question says, give examples of how the processes of urbanisation has been important at different times and has occurred at different speeds. So, says give examples of how the processes of urbanisation at different times. So then it's wanting you to look specifically at the times of the year. So I kind of answered that in the first question. So you might want to just keep it really basic in the first question and say how it's increasing. Just use the percentage urban side, and then on the next question use the years as well to help you answer the question. Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to have a go at that question. As I said earlier, with urbanisation you have two causes. There are only two causes that you've got to remember. The first one is rural to urban migration, and the second is natural increase. We're going to start with rural to urban migration. Within rural to urban migration, so people moving from the countryside into the towns, there are push factors and pull factors involved with this. So the push factors are the factors that are encouraging people to move away from the countryside. The pull factors are the factors that encourage people to move to the city. So for example, say you're living around Elephant and Castle and your parents have got a deliberate reason why they want to move away from Elephant and Castle. That would be a push factor. And say they want to move to Canterbury in Kent, they have a significant reason why they want to go there, would be a pull factor. So a good thing about where they want to go is a pull factor. A bad thing about where they want to leave is the push factor. So I've got a few different ones here that I wanted to talk you through. For LEDC countries where this is happening right now, the key thing is that there's been a decline in farming. With more mechanisation, there are less people needed on the farms. This happened in UK and European countries during the Victorian era, where we had the Industrial Revolution, but it's happening now in the LEDC countries. And they're opening up big factories in the cities, which means there's more jobs for them. So the factories in industrialising city will mean that there are more jobs. Oh, God, what have I done? One moment. Get rid of that. Alright, so factories in industrialising city means there's more jobs in the city, and therefore that would be an attraction of why they would want to move to the city. The fact that there are a lack of jobs, because farming is closing down and that kind of thing, would mean it was a push factor. It's a reason why they're moving away from the countryside. In cities, there are more hospitals, so you're more likely to survive and you're going to have better healthcare, but the healthcare in the countryside is quite poor, so that's a reason why they want to move away from it. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to finish those last four, and then we'll carry on going through it. Okay, so let's finish going through them. So better education will be a pull factor to the cities because they have universities, they have secondary schools, they have much more availability. I haven't put all of the opposites on here, so obviously the opposite for that would be poor education, which would be a push factor. So you can always give the other side of it. Lack of food or water is in particular. Hold the phone. Can't seem to grab this other one. I can't get it. Hang on. There we go. Right. Lack of food or water is a push factor away from the countryside, and that is because they have droughts and famine in the countryside, but the cities are much more accessible, so they can get aid a lot quicker as well, and imports and exports happen from the city, so it's more viable that they're going to get food. And then the last one here, higher earning jobs, is a pull factor to the cities. So as I said, you can always do the opposites to find out more push factors and pull factors, and you can add some more to your lists if you would like as well. So again, the two causes of urbanisation, rural to urban migration, where you've got the variety of push and pull factors. The second one there, natural increase. It seems to happen more in cities because with the migration, it's mostly the younger adults that are moving into cities to look for work, which therefore results in a higher proportion, a high level of births, but a lower level of death rate because there aren't as many elderly. So therefore, you're going to have naturally you're going to have more increasing population due to the mostly being young adults producing more babies. Okay, so I want to have a go at an exam question now. This was on a paper a couple of years ago. We'll do the highlighting first of the command words. So it says study figure 4. Always read the top bit, by the way, because it sometimes gives you more information than you realise. So study figure 4, a graph showing the population living in urban areas in the world and by continent between 1950 and 2030. So yeah, you've got all the continents down the side, you've got the whole world there as well. 1950 is the darker shaded grey there. 1975 is the lighter grey. Then the stripy one is 2000 and the plain white is 2030, which is the projected one. Okay, and then at the bottom you've got the population living in urban areas, the percentage again. Now the important thing is to highlight its 3 marks, which means that it's a point-based question, so you've just got to make 3 points. The command word is explain. It says explain the differences in urban growth between the richer parts and the poorer parts of the world. So straight away you've got to try to identify the richer parts and the poorer parts. So there are naturally more MEDCs either in Europe or North America, and then the more LEDCs are in Asia or Africa. So if we have a look, you should see, yeah, so both Europe and North America in 1950 had more urbanisation in, let me see if I can draw, so here and here, they had more urbanisation than in Africa and Asia. Okay, quite a bit more. So you could even use a specific percentage. So for example, in Asia, there was around 18% living in urban areas, whereas in Europe there was 51%. And then compare it to how much there is now. So again, there is still a lot more, there is still more in the MEDC kind of continents. But saying that, the amount it has increased is much greater than in Africa and Asia. So for example, in Asia, so say that was 18, let's go with 2000 there. So that has increased by about 20%, whereas Europe is about 20% as well, actually. It might be better to look at the 2030 one, because that one looks like it might be more. So there's 10, 20, 30, about 40% increase in Asia, whereas in Europe there's 20, 30, no, not even that's 28% in Europe. So look at the differences, and the key thing is actually it doesn't say describe, so use the data a little bit, but the key word there is explain. So what I was doing was kind of describing how it's changing. What you need to do for explain is to use the reasons why. So the richer parts of the world have already undergone industrialization, and therefore they've already moved into cities, whereas now it's happening in Africa and Asia and South America. There's a huge increase and a rapid increase in urban population. Okay, so try and use the reasons. You can use push and pull factors as well. Okay, so if you have a go at that question, 3 marks should mean 3 minutes, and then we'll mark it back in lessons next week. This is the Burgess model. It's quite a simplified vision of cities. In the middle you have something called the Central Business District, or CBD. The CBD is usually an area where you get the shops, you've got the main road networks, you get car parks, a little bit of residential but not as much. If you do get any residential, they're being flats above shops, and that kind of thing. In a city you get terraced housing, lots of housing close together, not a lot of space, a few shops but not many, like local shops, but then it is mostly residential. Then in the inner suburbs, as you go out a little bit further, you get more housing, semi-detached kind of housing. You get newer buildings. It kind of gets newer the further out you get as well. And then in the outer suburbs you have the detached houses, huge gardens, kind of rural to urban fringe area, where people might commute in to the city for work, or some places have started setting up like big business parks on the outskirts of cities, so that people don't have to commute in, and you have bigger businesses with big car parks and natural areas around them. So what I want you to do is, from the pictures, try to identify which parts are Central Business District, inner city and the suburbs. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to do that. I'm going to go through the answers now. So you should have found that the picture on the top right left is the CBD. You should have found that the one on the top right is the inner suburbs, although I must admit I do think it could look like the inner city as well. This one with the terraced housing in the corner is the inner city. Oops. Oh dear. All hell's broken loose. Do I undo? I don't know. I'll just start again. Dear, oh dear. Okay, and then the last picture is the outer suburbs with the big green areas. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is on your worksheet you have got this diagram, and what I would like you to do is annotate with the features that you find on here. So for example, so these are like the characteristics. Oh dear, what have I done? I don't even know if I'm going to get all this on. Touristics. Oh dear, oh dear. That is bad. Alright, so for example, I don't know why I didn't just type that. You've got main roads. So you might want to label that this is the oh dear, this is the CBD. In the background, I don't know if you can see, but there's Debenhams. So main chain high street shops. You have a few trees, but not a lot of vegetation there. One thing they're trying to make London is the national park, a city of like national parks. So that because London, compared to most cities, has got quite a lot of greenery and a lot of parks, so they're trying to make London a designated area. So you've got main roads. Oops, what's happened there? And what else have you got? You might have tube stations or good transport. It looks like this is a direction to a car park. So car parks are a characteristic. I'm going to add transportation networks because they are usually the most connected part of the city. Alright, I'm going to leave it there, and what I want you to do now is have a go through the other pictures, so the suburbs, the inner city. Just pick out things from the pictures which may be characteristics of that area. You can include the buildings, so another thing I didn't put on here is like the high-rise buildings. As you get further out, you might not have as much high-rise buildings. They might be big, but they might be spaced out a lot more as well. Okay, so have a go at that for the next 5-10 minutes.